Scott, what were the big turning points, in your opinion, in our history when we started to lose sight of that original ideal?
Well, that's a wonderful question, because we were born free, as you say, Fred. The Enlightenment, came out with the first fleet. It was literally written into the instructions given to Arthur Phillip. And then even at the time of Federation, this was almost like a perfection of the Westminster system that had been brought to us by the British, itself part of Western civilisation. When I think of turning points, Fred, I think of being in Sydney for the bicentennial. It was a Labor government. Bob Hawke was Prime Minister. The black armband view of history was around then. Isn't Australia terrible? And they objected and protested against the bicentennial, but Hawke was having none of it. They insisted on the slogan being celebration of a nation. Imagine if Albanese tried that on now. Imagine how the elites would go absolutely crazy. So even as late as 1988, there was still a feeling that Australia was something special, something to be celebrated. Still a view, I think, that mainstream Australians hold, but it's not one that you find in the elite institutions that actually run our country.
So, Scott, what's your advice to viewers taking back control of Australian culture?
Culture is something important to be valued. Our ideas, institutions, values, and our national character that you've written so eloquently about, Fred, our larrikinism, our egalitarianism. I think we can all do that in our everyday lives, is try and sustain those values and characters. I do think we have to do two things with the institutions. We must never stop trying to hold them accountable, to actually reclaim them for all Australians, not just self-serving elites, but we also have to build new institutions. We have to find new institutions of education, of culture, of broadcasting, dare I say it, Fred. And I think any Australian can get behind that in a whole variety of ways.
One thing we probably need to get control of again is our major political parties. I know this is a question without notice, but how do people take control of our parties? We seem to have lost control of our representatives, don't you think?
We absolutely have. There's just too much sand in the gears of our political system, preventing ordinary members of political parties, ordinary voters, actually holding their politicians to account. What we've seen with Scott Morrison is almost the apotheosis of the end of accountability, that under the guise of an emergency, you can just hand power over to people and then forget about it. These things are done away from closed doors, no scrutiny from Parliament, which was actually suspended for a while. This is a real crisis in our political system, in our democratic system, because there's no accountability left anymore. And that really requires ultimately an active citizenry. That comes back to your previous question, Fred. We can't just rely on those institutions anymore. We actually all need to get active.